Was knowing how Kobold's party pack on her crab cake's important to the lore, to the worlds where my mangas, The Devil's Deal, and Night of Slaughter take place in. Well, the thing is, the mating manual is more than just a gooner guide. In fact, it's an educational world-building tool. Like, there is a reason for understanding Kobold society structures, which are known as kennels. Understanding why the danger dog, the Kobold mother, and also the hunt father are important for adventurers to know when they're going to have to deal with Kobold, what they can expect in terms of threats and who they need to be paying attention to. Maybe a druid needs to be sent in to talk to the danger dog to allow the party to pass through the territory without conflict. Having documented records of a kobold named Bun Bun understanding Universal Basic Script, or USB, tells us that they are smart enough to learn how to communicate. It tells us that the kobolds can learn how to read and write, and more importantly, learn. From a world building standpoint, knowing that kobolds have the ability to be taken over by dragons impacts the laws of Mount Moltra, which in turn impacts Bane's Clearing, Headley Strait, and the Morkel Plains. Because dragons are terrifying enough on their own, but imagine now having an army of kobolds at their will. And in terms of how can this actually impact the lore or the mangas, well, imagine yourself going through the story of, let's say, the Night of Slaughter, and you're in the southern region, and you see an NPC that now has a kobold as a pet. Well, immediately we can understand through the mating manual that they're a kobold keeper at least, which is illegal. So we know that they are a criminal already. But now we have to wonder, are they simply a kobold keeper or are they a kiddler? Which is somebody who participates in sexual acts with their kobold that they have domesticated. Which in that case, we know that they're a sick person because kobolds are cans. They are creatures, animals, or non-mortal right entities, which is equivalent to being a zoophile. Understanding the goblin situation is even more important because we get direct reference to them in The Devil's Deal. Because someone makes a mention that I can't have those goblins causing problems, not today, which lets us know that the Great Collection views goblins as a whole enough to have an analogy that they can call bothersome kids goblins. And then we get asked a much bigger question with the Great Collection as to why we're allowing people to cook goblins, a honey roasted goblin finger. And she's giving this to a guard who easily just scarfs it down and continues to suckle on this thing like he's trying to win a prize. A thin and soft prize, if you know what I mean. But understanding the goblins' history and the way that they reproduce allows us to know a great deal about how society has to deal with them. Slight trigger warning for propaganda for forced pregnancy without essay. This is the type of content that they put up in the Great Collection because of how goblins reproduce. And this builds sentiment for how they feel, for why you can cook a goblin and eat them and give them to a guard without any repercussions. Like all these things, like learning why you can eat orc druid arm is important. And in terms of fans, it impacts you guys most of all because it will dictate what you want to do. Because if you choose to get an original character put into the lore with the Diamond Guild, you may want to restore goblins back to how they used to be, back before the brooding pools were ever a thing, allowing goblins to once again be a part of non-cans, allowing them to reclaim their position in the world as a sentient, welcome, peaceful race from the savages that they got turned into thanks to the forest elves and orcs. So a lot of people see this guide and just immediately think, oh, it's for gooners. It's basically just a Monster Girl encyclopedia, when really it's not. The mating manual is a guide for myself and you guys to understand the world in a much greater depth. Because if you understand how and why a race reproduces, you can understand their impacts on the world and how they are perceived and how they will be dealt with in the world and what kind of external views are taken to that race, that policy may be put in place that can impact the mangas. So that's why I'm building the guide, because it is important. Because goblins absolutely will be showing up in Devil's Deal. And you will be seeing kobolds in the Night of Slaughter. But you can grab a Ruby Gold sub to see its development, read the mangas online for free, or grab a physical copy just by seeing the bio or description.